Hello, everyone. Welcome to our third session from Scrum Masters Guild UK. So today we will be taking up a few questions that we've received on Slido for Agile Estimation. So just before we kick off the session, so let's look at some considerations before we begin. So please stay muted for the better experience for all the attendees. This session will be recorded, so if you want to hide your name or your pictures, please do. And this recording will be made available on the YouTube on Scrum Master Guild UK channel. We have used the Slido questions, so if you still want to submit, please do, but not sure if we have enough time to be able to answer. Before you go, please leave your feedback. I will be sharing the feedback form a bit later. So welcome again. Let's do a quick introduction because we've already done before, so we won't be taking up much time. Maybe we'll just say our name and we can kick off with the QA, and we'll have open mic discussion after we have taken most of the questions, probably after 45 minutes, and then closure and feedback. Okay, so let me, stop sharing my screen. Yeah, so Wilson, so as we know, it's about estimation today. So what is the main objective of estimation? Why do we estimate? I think this is the most confusing topic for most of the agile teams, and lots of questions around it. So let's begin with answering why do we estimate in agile? Why do we need estimate? No, it's not just agile. I know we estimate in most of the projects, but why estimation?
Well, I think that planning and estimation go hand in hand, and basically they are needed because many there are many reasons. So it can be to reduce risk, to reduce uncertainty, to be able to make better decisions as well. So even if we don't know exactly how long something will take, if we have some idea, it may be we may be able to make some sort of decisions, right? Establishing trust as well, and basically conveying information from business to development teams to users, between users. But I'd say if I had to choose one, it's basically helping in making decisions, right? It's like if I have £1,000 and I want to go to get some holidays, and I go to this travel agency and I say, oh, I want to have a nice beach holidays in Barbados. Here I have £1,000, and they say, well, you're crazy. £1,000 doesn't buy you a trip to Barbados. Okay, well then what are my choices with this amount of money? And they help me giving some options so that I can make some sort of decision as well, right?
Yeah, of course. So it's not just in projects or the product development, we estimate in our day-to-day lives as well. Yeah, coming to the next point is, why do we do story point estimation when we are doing capacity planning, which is the main input for our sprint, basically, based on the capacity planning. That's how we break down the task and take the number of hours that each team member is available. So why story point estimation when we do capacity planning as well?
Do you want to take that, or want me to take that as well?
You can take it.
I was hoping, and for those who just joined now, we were supposed to have more people on the panel. Okay, so it's not, it couldn't be just me. So, but unfortunately, for some unforeseens, they couldn't be here. So it's me and Rashmi as well that will take some questions. Okay, so I'll take this one. So you said, why doing story pointing and with capacity planning? I didn't quite understand, sorry.
So would capacity planning only not suffice? Why do we do a story point estimation? So who is benefiting from the story point estimation? Because definitely, I know story point estimation, why we estimate in terms of stories is to basically, to know our velocity, how much we can uh, so I'll let you answer that.
Okay. So so why do we do so these are two distinct things. Okay. So
Yeah.
we have capacity planning or capacity estimation, which is basically trying to understand, okay, how many people do we have? From those people, how much time will they be available? Is there anyone on leave? Is there anyone working in another project? Is someone supporting a release? Is someone doing training? So all those things kind of impact the capacity of a team. So just looking at velocity, it will not help you because it needs to go hand in hand with your capacity as well. It may be that you're reaching a festive period, Diwali, Christmas, or something like that, and most of the team will be on leave. So obviously your velocity will be affected. So you need to kind of understand, okay, how much can the team take? So that is just basically to learn about what will be the availability of the team, and based on that, make decisions about how much load you actually want to take in. So it would be crazy if we have a velocity of 20 story points every sprint, and now we are approaching Christmas, and we know that many of the team members will be off. Still plan 20 story points of size of work for that sprint. Um, it wouldn't be very sensible. So capacity planning is one thing. The story pointing, its sizing of the work. So if the team is already stable and we already have some historic reliable information that yes, look, it's between 15 and 22 story points. So it kind of draws a line of how much we actually want to take in. Okay, because otherwise you could just estimate the entire backlog and you don't know when to stop, or how would you make that decision. Yeah, so in my teams, what we do is we do some sort of capacity planning, so that informs us when should we stop, or what is the draw line. Okay, this will go to the sprint backlog, and now let's estimate another 2 or 3 stories in case that the team goes faster and they complete everything. We don't need to do another planning session mid-sprint. So it's already ordered, is already estimated. So we know that someone in the team could go and pick from the top of the backlog and put it on the sprint backlog. Hope that answers.
Yeah, if you have any questions from the audience, please raise your hands so we can take up, or if you have anything to add, please do. So the next question we have is, what is the difference between agile estimation and function point estimation? So I know function point estimation is something, I think it's used to measure the requirements based estimation, I guess. I have never done it before. So based on I think it's the estimation based on different requirements for the project. Do you have any inputs for that, Wilson?
Um, no, I've never used function point estimation, and I've been working with development teams for quite a long, being developer myself. So I I've never experienced function point uh, estimation. But yeah, so I really don't have any sort of inputs on that. Agile estimation, on the other side, is mostly about uh, sizing and not estimating in times, basically, but mostly in sizing.
Yeah. So that leads to our next question. So why do we estimate based on the complexity and why not the effort?
Why do we estimate in terms of complexity and not in effort? Well, you want to take that or want me to take?
Well, estimation is we do estimate in user story. So is user story is basically, not just the complexity, it's the risk, complexity, and the effort involved. So based on the whole, all these, keeping all these points in the mind, you estimate a user story. So you say, so how do you go about estimation is, you first take the smallest story in your backlog and probably, uh, well, okay, estimation can be done in, different techniques. So you do your, you use your Fibonacci series, or you do your bucket sizing, or, t-shirt sizing. So it's all basically, it's all relative estimation. So relative is, as I said, it needs to be based on the three factors. Um, okay, what were we saying? Yeah, so that's why do we do is because we cannot exactly say that, how much time a story is going to take unless and until you really dig deeper and, break down into smaller tasks to complete the story. So let me give you an example. So suppose, if you're in Bangalore, so if you have to reach from one point to another, say suppose from Shivaji Nagar to uh, Electronic City or something, right? So you can't really exactly tell how long it's going to take for you to reach from one point to another. If there is no you can't really forecast, as in, so you when you say to your friend, okay, I'm going to be there in probably, 1 or 2 hours, so that is kind of, relative estimation. So there could be so many factors in that, as to, there could be heavy traffic jam, or there could be some uncertainty, as there could be an accident or anything. So you can't really estimate as, exact time. So even in the user stories, so they are, because they are high level stories, you can't really give exact time, exact hours to the user story. So you estimate in terms of uh, complexity, risk, and, um, effort altogether. Wilson, do you want to add anything?
I think I already added too much, but yeah, I think you touched there the point. So basically, uh, an agile ways of estimating is not more about estimating in time or duration, but it's more about the sizing of the thing that you are building, and then you derive the duration based on the sizing and not the other way around. So basically, the story points can combine many things, and that will depend in the context where you are. It can be effort. So I like to think as effort, complexity, risk, and uncertainty as well. And when we talk about effort, it's more about the size or how much effort will this require. The complexity, because you may imagine you may develop two screens. One screen has 10 basic fields, but another one has 10 fields as well, but they need to be computed. There is some logic behind it. So even though by the outset they look the same, it's not the same because there is more complexity here involved. So you need to think, and the best way to estimate in story points is having some sort of triangulation or have some sort of baseline. So a good technique is, if you have, imagine 10 stories, you and your team would select, okay, what does it seem that is the simplest thing to do here? And you find one, agree, and you say, this is a one, call it a one. And then based on that, everything else is relative to that one, so that it makes it easier, because otherwise is relative to what if you don't have any baseline. So this is a good technique to start with, and as you become more and more mature and you have more things that you have done and you have past data, you can use and create your own buckets to see, okay, look, one story point we had these stories, 2, 3, 4, this kind of stories. So you can always compare to this and have that sort of discussion as well. Okay, why do you think that this is a 5 when we did something very similar and this was a 3 before? And someone may say, oh, this is a bit different because the testing will be differently. There are more negative parts to this. So and that would change and make it a little bit more effort.
Yeah, so I think the just to touch upon the triangulation technique. So what Mike Cohn says is it's basically you're not just comparing it with the smallest story, you are comparing it around, so suppose you have estimated one story as 3, and when you take up another story and you check whether it's bigger or smaller than the your reference story. So that's basically the triangulation technique. And yeah, so and also there could be user stories where the development and testing time might not be much, but there could be some sort of risk or uncertainty. So in such cases also you estimate the story a bit higher. Suppose you're waiting on the probably there's a dependency on the another team for you to get an API or something for you to complete the story. So based on that risk, you might probably size that story as higher. So there's various factors that you need to consider while estimating the user story. Okay, moving on to the next question.
We have Srinath that has raised his
Oh
hand,
yeah,
so
okay,
let's ask him to unmute.
sure.
Srinath, I think you can.
Yeah, hi, am I audible?
Yeah, you
Yes,
are.
Srinath.
All right. So let's take an example of a project who is moving from waterfall to agile. So they're always in touch with the estimation technique. I mean, probably let's say they're not in understanding of the agile estimations. Let's say they are good at the waterfall estimation, what they used to do earlier. So now you have just migrated to agile, and people ask you that, okay, what is your estimation? You give us the timeline, and we don't know what is the team velocity because it's still the sprint one. So in this case, how would you give the release timeline if your team is new, but you just have to estimate it?
Wilson, would you like to take up that?
Yeah. So yes, that is a reality, and that can happen. So there are many components here. First one is kind of an education of the stakeholders and the sponsors of that as well. If they understand what is agile estimation, if you don't have enough data to kind of forecast, I think the best way to go about is starting and then provide an estimation based on empirical data, so that you could say, after 2 or 3 sprints, you already have some sort of data that you can look back, and you can forecast the rest of the backlog in some way, and give some sort of forecast saying, look, based on the data that we have so far, and if the backlog doesn't change, and that is a big if, okay, we forecast to be between X amount of sprints to Y amount of sprints. Yeah, you could say 6 to 8 sprints. What I never do is saying, oh, this will take exactly 8 sprints or 4 sprints, because then people will take that as a hard commitment, and they will mark that date, big circle on the calendar, and then they will make you accountable to that. So that is one way. That is one way to go about. The other, if they really, really want an estimate, you can provide an estimate, but don't provide only that. You have to provide as well what is the degree of confidence that you have on that. So you could say, well, based on what we have, what we know, yeah, probably you take 8 sprints, and we are talking about with a level of certainty of 50%. What does that make sense? What does it mean? It could take, uh, 12 sprints, or could take a little bit less than 8. And wouldn't take less, but at least you wouldn't the person who are you giving the estimation to, they wouldn't mark that as a hard commitment, and they would understand, okay, look, there is some uncertainty here, so we need to take care of that as well. So
Again,
that would be my advice.
it depends on the number of PBIs they have in the backlog, right? And then maybe it'll be a good idea to suggest them, we will see for a couple of sprints, and then we can estimate the number of sprints that we might require to complete the backlog. So, or, deliver. But I also have seen another, I have read somewhere where when in such scenarios where we don't know the previous, performance of the team, but we know the number of backlog items that we have, they kind of, if suppose you have 100 backlog, 100 stories in the backlog, they multiplied by 0.6, so which gives you 60 story points. And then just as a rough estimation, suppose you're doing 20 story points in each, so probably 3, or I don't know, there is a technique, probably I can share that later.
Yeah, but we just need to take into account that these are all guesses.
Yeah,
all guesses, and I've never worked in a project that in a software project that had some sort of complexity that basically was not replicate something that we have done before, because that is really unlikely to happen, where the initial estimate matched it. Okay, unless someone has put a huge padding just to make sure that they would do something, that they knew that this would take maybe something about 8 to 10 sprints, but someone gave, this will take 20 sprints to go safe. Yeah, but that is not actually an agile estimation, and that is not being kind of honest as well with the stakeholders.
Yeah, sure. So the next question we have is when to use story point versus our estimation. I know I've seen many organizations, estimating in the story points, but then they're also converting them into hours. How have you ever experienced this, Wilson? Or what's your thought on, because they say, you cannot go more than 8 hours. So they kind of compare that 8 hours for a day's work. And so they say, anything that goes above 8 hours, you should not, you should break it down further. So I have seen many companies doing that. What are your thoughts? You're on mute, Wilson.
Yes, I lost you for 2 or 3 seconds, so I didn't hear the initial
question. Okay, yeah, let me repeat that. So, okay, when do you use story point versus our estimation in hours? So what I was saying is sometimes, in most of the organization, they do estimate in story points, but the story points, they compare it to, they convert it into a number of hours required to complete that story. Say, suppose, 8 is your maximum story point that you can estimate. Anything greater than 8 has to be broken down further. So here 8 is there, they consider that as number of hours. So 1 day. So anything that goes beyond 8, they consider it as like more, and that needs to be. So what is the difference, or when to use story point and when to use our estimation?
Okay, so historically, story points have come in place to move away from this conversation of time estimation and duration estimation, and somehow people still want, or they are drawn near durations and times, but they can't be like that. And that's what I said in the beginning, is you size it, you size and you estimate the sizing, and then you derive the duration based on empirical data. But the question was when to use one and when to use another. I think that will come as a personal choice for the team. If they see, for some reason, if they understand, look, we are starting with time, but we are going all over the place. It's not working. Let's try something else, or the other way around. Because on time as well, we need to make a difference. And there is, there is the elapsed time, elapsed days, for example, and ideal days. What is an ideal day? An ideal day is, as you said, okay, I would be 8 hours available only doing this. I don't take phone calls. I don't go to meetings. I don't reply to emails. I don't respond to escalations. All I do is this, and that is ideal. Okay. Uh, but as we know, that doesn't exist. Okay. So, and the issue here is, imagine that if I say, oh, this would probably take me 2 days, and then the product owner or someone else will take, okay, 2 days from today. Today is Thursday, so Friday, Monday, so Monday COB, this will be ready, right? I say, oh, no, 2 days if I don't have anything else to do, right? But it's not, because on my mind, I think, okay, 2 days if I don't have anything else to do, because I'm not counting all these things that may happen. Okay. So it is important that, and I've seen some teams that they kind of estimate in ideal hours or days, but when they communicate outwards, they don't communicate in those ideal. They put some buffer so that you know they can manage the expectations of of other people as well. So they would put some padding, I don't know, zero 0.5 or something like that. But it's quite important, if you choose to do in days and hours, be aware, are you talking in elapsed time, or you're talking in ideal time? And uh, um, and when we go back, estimating in stories, and we've already talked about that just earlier, is all about the sizing and not about the duration.
Yeah, that's right. So in even in our organization, we used to break down stories which were, higher than 8, but 8 doesn't mean a day that can be completed in a day. It's basically the complexity that, of the user story that cannot be completed within the sprint. So that's why we used to break it down for um, if we sized it more than 8. So yeah, so the next question is, why do we use only Fibonacci series for the story point? And why not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So let me try to answer this question. So Fibonacci series, as we know, it goes as 1, 1, 2, 3. So it's basically adding the previous two numbers, and then that generates the next number in Fibonacci series. So as the story goes bigger, the complexity increases. So that increases the uncertainty as well. So there's higher risk. So it's that, I think that is the reason that we use Fibonacci series, not just the continuous sequence. What are your thoughts on that, Wilson?
Yeah, so basically the Fibonacci sequence is what happens as the number increase, the spacing between each number, the interval increases as well. So as you say, 2, 3, then 5, and then 8, and then 12. Okay. Because if it was linear, it would be really hard to kind of discuss, okay, is this a 9 or is this a 10, and why is this a 9 or that is a 10? But it's much easier to have that discussion. Okay, this seems to be an 8 and this seems to be a 5. Okay, because there is some gap in there. Obviously on the lower things, 1, 2, 3, they are more they are sequential, but basically it's to kind of see, okay, if this is too big, maybe we can't take it, or we need to have a stab at this and do a split in this, because this is already too large to be taken on in one iteration and producing something of value out of
Yeah.
this. So
And this also relates to the cone of uncertainty, right? So the higher the story, the uncertainties are higher. So when the story is smaller, so we know exactly, like if say suppose the story point is 1, so we exactly know what is happening in the, I mean, what is the story about? We know everything, it's going to be done. It's easier. So when the story point is higher, the uncertainty is higher, and we don't know the risk involved, or the effort, or it's not very clear. So that's the reason we break it down into smaller stories. So basically, Fibonacci series, as it goes on, the complexity goes on increasing with each number. So I think that's the reason we use Fibonacci series. Why do we always use Fibonacci series? It's not, we don't always have to use Fibonacci series. We can also use t-shirt sizing. So it could be XS, S, medium, large, extra large, but most of the organizations do use the numbers, which are more easy to, I don't know, to relate to, Wilson?
yeah, I guess so, but it doesn't need to be 1, 2, 3. You could multiply that by the order of hundreds and use those units, as long as they make sense, and you're always using the same range of values. You could use 100, 200, 300, 500, 800, 1200, or create your own ways of estimating, or your own unit. We have a question. We have Anu raising hand, so going to ask to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Anu.
Okay, so I just wanted to add one more point about the Fibonacci series. Like when Wilson rightly covered that the complexity part, and when it is a small user story, 1 or 2 size, we definitely know what is been asked as acceptance criteria, and how it has been sized. So when it goes at higher level, if the user story has been scored as 8 or 13, and as a requirement that we cannot take the 8 story points into our sprint, we have to usually break that down into multiple user stories. So supposedly we wanted to break the 8 pointer story into 2 story points. So it is really difficult to just split it 4 and 4, right? When we break the user story, some of the portion may be complex, or some of the portion may be easy. So in that case, it is really beneficial to score the user story like 3 and 5 in that sense. Please
But
correct
it
me if I'm
doesn't
wrong.
necessarily have to be 3 and 5, right? It could be
Correct, but it cannot be 4 and 4. Like if
yeah,
it is
yeah,
the other way round,
yes,
it cannot be broken into
cannot be
4 and
equal.
yeah, that's all.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, thank you, Anu. Thanks for the input. So moving on to our next question. Do we always have to use t-shirt sizing, the magic estimation technique, before planning poker for estimating requirements? So what I understand is t-shirt sizing, we do use t-shirt sizing to maybe we could segregate the product backlog items into t-shirt sizing, but planning poker you can either use t-shirt sizing, or you can use the Fibonacci series, or you can use any other estimation technique as well. So it's not necessary to use only t-shirt sizing. Did you understand anything from this question, Wilson?
I haven't read, but from what you say, so t-shirt sizing is just another way to do relative estimation again. But what I've seen in the reality is usually t-shirt sizing is used to estimate at an earlier stage when there is a huge uncertainty, or to estimate really big things such as epics or themes. Yeah, so t-shirt sizing are are more appropriate in that sense. But again, if the team is comfortable using t-shirt sizing to do their user story estimation, why not? There isn't any law stating that you should only use story points or t-shirt sizing or anything else.
Yeah. So the next question we have is, suppose if the estimate is wrong and couldn't complete within the sprint, how can we handle this situation? So you can't really do anything at this point when you're within the sprint. Probably you should just retrospect, and Scrum Master should coach the team as to how estimation should be done. And don't really understand this context. What when you mean estimation has gone wrong, does that mean the team was not able to complete the story within the sprint? So what suppose, let's take that scenario, Wilson. So how do you handle this situation?
So as I said, an estimation will always be wrong. Okay. Now, on that context, okay, that someone estimated something and they thought that would be it would be possible to do within a sprint, and it wasn't. Is that the estimation was wrong, or what kind of circumstances it kind of happened? So I think it's important in that situation to understand what was the context. Was there any dependency that we didn't know about, or was there any dependency that took more time to kind of overcome? Was there any issues with any environment? Um, or what was it? Maybe we estimated something, but as a developer started working in it, it learned very soon or late that it would be more complex than actually uh, uh, initially thought about. So if that is a scenario, then we need to take some learning and uh, kind of decide, okay, what do we do the next time this happens? Okay, maybe the developer should raise this or with the product owner and say beforehand, look, I have discovered that this is a bit more complex. So, I was working with this library. This library is new. And we didn't know that there was some limitations here or there, or it's not possible to do this. So basically I will need to find another library. Or is there any way that we can split this story in a way that still make sense and deliver value, or the product owner may make a decision that, okay, let's park this for now, and let's pick another story instead of this one. So it's all about understanding what was the situation, and if you see a pattern as well. Okay, maybe your definition of ready is not very mature, or maybe you don't even have a definition of ready, and maybe that's one of the things that the team needs to put in place.
Yeah, so in this case, it's okay to re-estimate the story, and if the story is much larger, you can break it down into smaller stories, and this can be done during the sprint. So yeah, thank you, Wilson. So the next question is, if the product owner is not ready for estimating stories, how to convince them? How can we show importance of estimation to the team? I think in my understanding, estimation is the story point estimation is mainly for the product owner and the business to know, to know the velocity and how long this would take to achieve the, complete the whole product development, or, um, the the number of sprints that if we know, the whole of the, if we have all the stories in the product backlog to complete the product. So it's just to get the estimate of number of sprints that the team might take to deliver the product. So basically, I feel estimations are more important for the business rather than the team. and also for team to understand. I think it's more about capacity planning, and the tasks that are more important for the team. What do you think, Wilson? Because I have a bit different opinion about the estimates. They are not very important for the team, but I think it's more important for the business perspective.
I think is important for everyone and especially for the team. But coming back to this, as I read this, I'm not sure what does this mean. So the product owner is not ready for estimate. So the product owner is not there to estimate. The product owner is there to support the team with any questions that they have, or reclarify what is the intent. Okay, and the product owner can influence the estimation in that way. So I've never worked in a team where the product owner, unless a product owner is also a developer or coder, that is there putting his estimation, saying that this is a 5 or 3, because the work is to be estimated by the people who are going actually to do the work. Okay, so that's one thing. So that's why I kind of don't understand this question. And the second part is like how to convince them. Um, so assuming that the product owner does not want to be in the estimation or in the planning part or on the sprint planning, then that is a different conversation to have. And basically, at the first instance, try to understand why without being judgmental or confrontational. Just try to understand why does that product owner thinks like that, and asking them questions. Okay, so how do you see, or how would you want the team to kind of forecast when they could deliver part of the backlog? Because I'm quite sure the product owner would like to know when something would be ready, or if there's any risk into delivering something. So yeah.
I think, yeah, estimations are more important for the product owner. So I'm not sure if they are not ready to do it. Yeah, as Wilson said, we need to understand why they don't want to do it. But estimations in terms of, the team, it is quite useful for them to know how much work they can take in the sprint to achieve the sprint goal. The next.
And it's not only that, because when I facilitate the planning poker sessions, when we are doing the sprint planning, it's not at all about the number at the end of it. It's all the discussions that the team has that leads to that number. And what we gain with this is uncovering uncertainty, is uncovering different point of views, is getting more clarity on what is the ask and how the team is intending to do that work, and basically having a shared understanding. Because many times what happens is someone estimates as an 8, someone estimates as a 3, and it's quite interesting to have that discussion and invite the people at these extremes. Okay, why do you think this is a 3? And the other person, why do you think this is an 8? And they talk about, and then said, oh, I thought we need to do this as well. And someone says, and then the product owner say, oh yes, that's right. But the person who estimated as a 3, they didn't understand that on the first instance. Or could be the other way around. Product owner said, no, that is not the case. Maybe it's not clear. Let me maybe write this in a different way, or just clarify, no, that's not intended. That it's just this bit that we have to do. And again, you do a new round, and you see that if the estimations are converging or not. So at the end of the day, more than the number is all about the discussions that the team have and what they learn together, because the last thing you want is starting something and at the end of it doing something completely different, or making more than that actually was needed. And we have Anu that has raised her hand for quite a long now, so I'm going to ask her to unmute.
No, sorry, I will raise. I will lower down my hand. Sorry.
Okay.
I think it was from the previous question.
Okay. Cool. Then next question, if
So the next question is, a team has started 20 velocity sprint. I think it's 20-point story, I guess, 20 story points. There is a requirement if 10 story point, which needs to be completed without changes to current sprint. There are no chance of change in scope, time, and cost, and this is communicated with the product owner. I quite didn't get this questions. So what I understand is the team has started with 20 story point velocity. Probably they have estimated 20 story points for the whole sprint, but there is a requirement where 10 story points which needs to be completed without change to current sprint. So what I understand is they probably have to add another 10 the story point, which is 10 story point, and there is no change in scope, time, and cost, and this is communicated with the product owner.
yeah, I don't know.
In
We'd be assuming many things here. I don't know if this is
yeah,
if or off, and what does it mean. But anyways, we can take a stab at this and do some assumptions, um, that in the situation where the team is mid sprint and they understand that, look, there is something that is not possible, and if they are pushed back on, there's no change in scope, time, and costs, how to handle this case? Well,
so basically you have to
what
add 10 more story points to the sprint,
well
and
what
product owner has signed this off. So I think at this in this scenario, the team has to push back and make some negotiation on the story points, because that's the capacity. I mean, that's the maximum they could do, probably 20 story points, and probably negotiate with take out some story point and add this high priority story, which is 10 more story points. Probably that's the way to handle it. What do you say, Wilson?
So we need to understand that when a team forecasts what they can do in a sprint, that is not actually a contract. They're doing their best to their knowledge at that time, what they could do, and that is a forecast. And I think it's quite important to we understand forecasts
Okay.
and commitments, and then all that. So
Looks like it is the average story point. It is the team's average velocity is 20 story points. So that's the question. Yeah.
Look, the things that can happen here are many things. Is that you force the team to work extra hours, or they will just do shortcuts and quality will be suffering. If it's a one-off, and the product owner can see, look, we really depend because this release needs to be go out, or there is a regulatory need that we really need to put in place, otherwise the company will be exposed to kind of damage or sue or something like that. So it's really important to understand what is the context and why it's not possible to change dates, for example. And the team may understand, and they may put the effort in to work extra time or something like that, with the promise that they will be compensated for that. But it should not be something that is constantly done like that, because as we I think it's one of the principles that everyone should be working as in a sustainable manner, right? So I think that's the most important thing here. I think we have 10 minutes only, so probably it's time
Yeah.
to allow people to make questions. So if you'd like, raise your hand, and so that nobody goes at once, and have the open mic for any other questions you have. Please raise your hand. Or just unmute yourself. So,
I
so
see
we have
Deepak is
Deepak.
here.
Yeah, you can unmute Deepak.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
How do you do slicing? I mean, if there are story with 8 story points, and what are the techniques you use in slicing? Do you separate development and testing, or do you do vertical slicing?
Yeah. That is not a slicing. That slicing in doing a design and then doing the development and then doing the testing. That is not, in my way of seeing, that is not a way to slice. Because let's remind ourselves, a Scrum team is there to deliver value. Okay, it's not to deliver just outputs of things. Now that would really depend on what kind of context are you working and what is the story, if you are doing APIs, if you are doing screens and things like that. There are some techniques. There is one that is very famous by Mike Conn, which is called it's not the spider, but it's almost it's speeder, that I'll put here on the chat. But for example, if you had a functionality that is to manage users, let's say it, and you have this user story. Okay, so as a portal administrator, I want to manage the users of my online shop. Okay, so this may be too big, and the way that you could do is doing by the operations, the CRUD, which is create, retrieve, update, and delete. And you may say, look, the way that we want to do is we're going to split this, and we have one story that has a portal administration. I want to be able to create new users, and another story that as a portal administrator, I want to be I want to be able to update existing users, and another one to delete users. So that is still valuable. uh, I'm not saying that is releasable or you would release it, but at least is valuable. What would you gain from it is that you could, at the end of the sprint, show this to your users, and they could give you feedback on that, or they could use it, whatever. But I'm going to put on the chat the spider so that you guys can see it. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Grace
Deepak,
has
yeah, Deepak
raised
has
the
put
hand.
a thumbs up, so hopefully he's happy with that. We have Grace. Grace, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace. My question is, how do you do your, how can I do my capacity planning to use that to measure how many stories we can estimate during refinement process, as well as during planning? Is it possible? I don't know if you understand the question.
Yeah.
How to effectively use the outcome of my capacity planning to plan the number of stories that can be done during refinement, as well as the number of stories that will be estimated during planning.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So look, if you well, I don't know, Rashmi, do you want to answer so that it's not only me, or?
So how we have done in our organization is, of course, we do the estimation for the sprint, the number of stories that we can take, and then we do the capacity planning. So basically, even before we start the sprint planning, we have the each team member's capacity ready, depending on their the number of hours they'd be spent. I mean, deducting the number of hours that they would be spending on the sprint ceremonies or any other meetings, or, depending on their availability. So suppose, my capacity is 5 hours a day. So 5 times 8 is 40, right? So 40 is my number of hours that I'm available. So then once we have estimated the number of stories, so we then start breaking down these stories into tasks. So to complete this user story, depending on the acceptance criteria, so what are the tasks that I need to do, or the whole team needs to do to complete the story. So we break them down into tasks, and which are then estimated in number of hours. So that's estimated in hours. So that kind of, suppose in the first user story, suppose my contribution is for 2 tasks, which take about say 2 whole days. So my capacity is 5 times 2, right? So 10 hours of my capacity is gone there. So my remaining capacity is another 10 hours. So 5, 8, 40, right? Sorry, 30. So we do capacity planning that way. And once we see that, okay, first of all, when we estimate the user stories, we also prioritize them in the backlog. So we pick up one by one the top items, and then we start planning them, breaking down into tasks and then the capacity planning. So once, the capacity is reached, the whole team capacity is reached, and there's no more and stories that we can accommodate, then we because they are at the bottom of the sprint, we probably plan them in the next for the next sprint. That's how we do capacity planning. Did you understand that, Grace? Did you get that?
Yeah, I got bits of it. Yes, yes, please. Yeah. Wilson, do you want to add something to it there? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you want, I can even show how do we do again. And I want to tell, there is no perfect formula that will give you exactly with 100% certainty what anyone can do, unless they have already done it, or it's not complex at all and it's already been done many times in the past. But again, software development, it's not like that. So I can show a technique to start with, especially if you don't have any empirical data from past. So I hope you guys can see it. Can you see my Excel sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take it for example, and I'm happy to share show this because I've changed the name. So that's all fine. So basically, this was my my capacity planning for this current sprint. So we are 10-day sprint. So we put here the dates. We have the Saturday, Sundays doesn't count. We put here, so for example, line by line, we'd say, okay, so Tom, is there any day that you are not available, or are you doing any training, or you are on annual leave, or there is any bank holiday? So for example, we know that on Monday, 31st of May, it's a bank holiday. So we put it here, and most of the team will be here. So, but this is a scenario. Let me just actually put this in a clean state so that we don't have these things now. And okay, so done. So we start with the assumption that in a sprint, a coder, and I'm saying coder, not a developer, a coder can do 8 story points. And this is an assumption only. So you'd say if that person is available throughout the entire sprint, we do 8 story points. Okay, so that person is available 10 days, 10 days. For each day that that person is not available, we take out 1 story point. Okay, so if you do this by line, and for the testers, because they are not building new things, they are testing things that are going to be built, we don't count, we don't put them on the sum, because otherwise you'd put more story points and actually because they are not going to contribute into creating new stuff. So assuming that you'd sum up and you have a theoretical capacity of 36 story points. And from there, we cut 20% to have some slack, or because people need to do some learning or anything else, okay? And then we come with a number. And this number can be used to actually plan for the sprint. Now, it might end up that at the end of the sprint, you might do more or you might do less, but this was just for you to start with. As you go and you have more past data, you can use that data in context with in context as well with what was the capacity. So if you count that, okay, well, we had in number of days, we had the team in total, we had 101 man days there. And in this occasion, we did this amount of story points. And when the capacity was 90 days, we did this amount of story points. So if you use that information, again, is empirical data, you can make better decisions. So I hope this kind of helps to start with. So it's a good technique to start with, especially if you don't have any past data to make decisions. Grace, does that help?
Thank you so much, both of you. It's been really very helpful.
Good.
Very, very helpful, both answers. Thank you.
No worries.
That's interesting to see, Wilson, how you do capacity planning in terms of story points. I have never done that before.
Wilson, hi, this
Shiva.
is Shiva here. I have a question. Yeah, sorry. So I've seen this table that you're taking for 10 working days, you're taking 8 story points, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
because you know you always have the sprint planning, you have the sprint retrospective, you have the sprint review. So basically, you'd say, okay, we are not counting here 20% of that again. So
non-productivity.
yeah.
Is that, sorry about that, sorry. Is that same as the focus factor or something?
I don't know what is that, so I can't say.
The focus factor, they're referring the productivity, the actual productivity where the team contributes.
Yeah, that is really, really hard to measure, isn't it? Because as I said before, there are so many things that can happen. People may be dealing with personal things or meetings or maybe helping in interviews or maybe reviewing codes or studying. So there's a lot that could go on. So it's really hard to say, but yes, it's like assuming, okay, this is the time that the team will have, and if you want to call it focus time, yes, focused in working towards the progress of the sprint and the sprint goal. We have Srinath as well. You can unmute yourself if you want.
Yeah, so I have a question related to what Rashmi told about the the estimation doing in terms of hours for the task. So are we still not trying to backtrack related to the number of hours, saying that okay, we take XYZ as a task and we take 3 hours or 4 hours. So in terms, are we still not doing the same kind of micromanagement which we used to do, where today we say okay, we do the estimation where time is still not the constraint. So is it not a conflict of what we do in terms of
Yeah,
hours
this is
and in terms
main.
of
Yeah, I get that. So, but what we did was, this was mainly to see how much time we might need for the task. It's not sitting on their head and saying that, you've done, you have estimated this task for 3 hours and why have you not completed. It's nothing to do with that. It's just to know how many user stories we can plan for the sprint. So and then of course, each, as I said, the user story could be sized as 8, but it wouldn't take so a lot of time for development and testing, but there could be uncertainty towards or dependency from other team to get something before they could test or, those kind of things. So not necessarily, it doesn't mean that 8 means that it's going to be taking longer time. It could take shorter times, but then what are the tasks that we need to complete? So that's purely for capacity planning and nothing to do with micromanagement.
Okay, but when let's say if your product owner is coming from a part of your product management aspect as
Project
well,
management.
yeah, so they always think, okay, when you have given something as in terms of hours, so they think that as a commitment, right? So so that is one thing which we have to really take care as a scrum master in that case, right?
Yeah, that's true. But we have not done in story point. I think that's a good one which Wilson has showed. Maybe that's a good approach to follow going forward. I need to learn more about that.
Hours is different. No,
Yes.
you're right. You're right, because subtask for hours is correct and estimation for story point is different. These are two different entities. So you are considering capacity planning in terms of hours. So for that, you will take the subtask in terms of hours. So end of the sprint, you can match that how many hours the entire team has, whether they cross the capacity of for that sprint or not. We can verify that, whether they overburden, whether they underutilized and all. For that reason, we can utilize the subtask in terms of hours. So the story point estimation is different. That is not for the how much we spend time. That is for the how much complexity of work we have done.
Absolutely. One last question from Srinath has raised his hand from long time.
I think I just have to lower my hand. Sorry for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we have come to an end now. We already overrun 7 minutes. Apologies for that. So thank you everyone for your coming for the session today. And